Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the moderator of the next session, Rikard Jozwiak.
Hello, everybody. Hi, thanks. I'm still Rikard Jozwiak, and I must admit that I was a bit bemused when I got the offer to moderate this chat with the Croatian Prime Minister. Why is that? Because I'm probably the only one in the room who's never been to Croatia. So I know I've missed a lot. So anyway, I called a Croatian friend and said, like, well, what shall I say? And like, apart from the Dalmatian holiday destinations, there are only two things you need to know about Croatia. The first thing is that Luka Modric is still dominating in midfield, running the show. The second thing is that the Prime Minister, Andrej Plenković, is still running the show in Zagreb. All you need to know. Now, Luka Modric is not here with us today. He's earned a well-deserved break. But please, I'm so happy to have the Prime Minister of Croatia since 2016, one of the greatest persons to discuss this topic. Please give it up for Mr. Andrej Plenković, Prime Minister of Croatia.
Hello.
Say hi.
Thank you.
So, we only have about half an hour. I will not monopolize Mr. Plenković, so already now think of questions. You can raise your hand or you can use the Slido. Mr. Plenković, commanding in case, time for Europe to step up. I think of no better way of stepping up than potentially two huge summits coming up. NATO summit in Hague, EU summit in Brussels. Perhaps what I could see as the two deliverables in Brussels will be more sanctions on Russia, renewing the sanctions that you have already put, 17 of them, 17 packages, and perhaps start accession talks finally with a country that you and I have covered for a very long time, Ukraine. Can you guys deliver? Can Europe step up?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. Great to be in Prague at GLOBSEC. I would like to greet also the former president of Croatia, Madame Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović, who is for years attending the GLOBSEC events, and again today. You are right, two major summits being prepared for the end of June, one in Brussels, one in Hague. When it comes to Europe and delivering after the altered security circumstances, especially in the past 3.5 years since the brutal Russian aggression against Ukraine, I think that everybody is, in terms of political decision-making, more than convinced and mature that we need to step up defense spending. And therefore, it is relatively, I would say, without major obstacles, the process within the preparation of the NATO summit, that the objective of 5%, which is going to be set, as far as I can understand, by all consultations that we have conducted so far, for the period until 2032, as far as I know, which means that it is a 7-year period for adaptation, for growth, for smart investing into greater military and defense capabilities. But of course, 3.5 stricto sensu defense, and at the same time, 1.5% related to the defense spending, which gives a certain flexibility for everyone, especially when it comes to infrastructure, to have literally dual use of investments which are good for civilian purposes, but at the same time will be and could be used for military purposes. With that in mind, I can only recall that Croatia has already attained the pledge of current 2%. We are far above the 20% of modernization. We are at the 30% of modernization. We have increased our defense spending since I have been the Prime Minister for more than 200%. Our ambition is to come to 3% certainly until 2030, and I think with this new ambition of speaking about defense exclusively, I think we will make substantive efforts with the shape of our economy to be able to deliver on time when it comes to 3.5 plus 1.5. This is, I think, the major message, and basically, along with the continued support to Ukraine, the only relevant message of this Hague summit. Seems to be a different cultural approach, because it is going to be a relatively short final declaration compared to the previous ones. When it comes to the EU, I think I'd like to commend the work of Ursula von der Leyen and Commissioner Kubilius. He's the first ever commissioner exclusively responsible for defense, which has immediately made a difference with the white paper, with the Rearm Europe, with SAFE. I think that these instruments and the amount of funds which is being made available, 150 billion euros, is an important step in strengthening the strategic autonomy of the European Union. At the same time, we'd like to keep strong alliance, strong NATO and strong transatlantic relations, but I think in the all eventualities, Europe should be more interoperable, more capable, and more, I would say, relying on itself. This is the major messages which today I can see coming from these two summits. When it comes to sanctions on Russia, I think they will be certainly a topic on the agenda. We have already seen some hiccups when it comes to the decision making, but we have found a way to continue 27 minus 1, etc., the story which was there relatively recently, but I think we'll find a way.
On the EU summit, there are a lot to unpack there, but on the EU summit there is a little bit of an elephant in the room called Victor. Mm-hmm. I know that you are considered in Brussels as a bit of an Orban whisperer, because you're one of the few that actually have a fairly decent relationship with him, and at the same time you're very keen to move forward on the Ukraine agenda. Do you think there is a chance already in Brussels in a few weeks to be able to get Hungary on board on both renewing the sanctions and finally open accession talks with Ukraine?
I just came from Odessa. I was yesterday at the summit between Ukraine and the leaders of Southeast Europe, and one of my main messages in Odessa was actually to support the opening of Cluster 1 in the new framework of the structure of the accession negotiations between the EU and Ukraine. We basically have a broad agreement. There is some uncertainties with the position of Hungary, but I think there is still enough time to find a solution for that issue. I think it would politically be extremely important for Ukraine. We have accompanied them in the process of a bilateral agreement that we have, where Croatia strongly supports their accession. I was myself, when I was a member of the European Parliament, head of delegation for Ukraine, so I've been visiting Ukraine frequently. That's how you and I spoke many times, almost 10 years ago. It was a long time ago now. But
you've gone somewhere in your life. I'm still the same.
Well, I'm pretty stable for 9 years, the same position. So when it comes to the decision making, I think we should make an effort. We should send that signal. We were the ones who supported Ukrainians' application for membership, positive opinion, and the whole support in terms of know-how, how to start. When it comes to the relationship with Hungary, Hungary is a neighboring country. We have a very important historical relationship. We have a lot of common interests, but we differ on positions. For instance, on Ukraine, Croatia is absolutely clear on all the critical positions, and here we understand that we sometimes disagree. Victor is the only one now who is, in terms of continuity by stage, longer than me sitting at the European Council. So we've been there for a very long time, and we understand what are the odds.
On the NATO summit, is it a problem that there might not be a NATO-Ukraine Council? Zelensky is invited, he will be around, but is it a problem that Ukraine is not center stage there anymore? And may I ask as well, on the 5%, okay, 3.5 goes to defense spending, hard defense spending. Mm-hmm. What about the 1.5 going to Ukraine? Is that something that Croatia would consider?
Well, 1.5, the way it is envisaged now, will go for infrastructure, will go for the civilian capabilities, for the civil protection, everything that can be used in terms of defense in a, let's say, broader ring of stricto sensu defense spending, and I think there is a general agreement. But at the same time, I'm sure there will be a commitment by the NATO leaders also to continue strong support to Ukraine. The same commitment exists at the EU level. Ukraine needs support of the West, there is no doubt about it, and other international partners, because being resilient to Putin's aggression for 3 years and now almost 4 months. I think it is an incredible achievement, more than 1,200 days of fighting with such an adversary. It deserves all the respect that we can, and therefore I think that the military, political, economic, financial, technical, humanitarian support which was extended to Ukraine is unprecedented. I don't think we remember it, at least on the European soil, in a similar manner. So I think there will be ways how to fulfill the NATO membership resilience, how to strengthen European strategic autonomy, and how to find enough financial and military means to help Ukraine strengthening its own military, which is anyway already one of the strongest militaries on the continent.
See, we're already getting good questions here. This one is tying into this one. Does Croatia support Ukraine's membership in NATO? I want to push it a little bit more. Would you say that question, because I think you would support it, but is that question now off the table?
Well, at the moment it is not on the table as it was basically 17 years ago. Had it been agreed 17 years ago, perhaps the last, let's say, 10, 12 years would have been very different for Ukraine. At the moment, it's very clear there is no consensus about NATO membership of Ukraine. Even the position of the biggest ally, which is the United States, was very clear. If I may elaborate a little bit on that, what we have witnessed in the first 6 months of the presidency of President Trump is an attempt to attain peace, which I think is really worthy, and everybody is welcoming this initiative. But at the same time, it is clear that President Trump is not identified with the first or second Russian aggression against Ukraine. In the position of the United States, these two aggressions, both the one in 2014 and the one which started in February 2022, are, in his view, most of all the responsibility of the democratic US administrations. First one Obama, and second one Biden. And therefore the sense of identification is lacking, which is extremely important in the way that the whole crisis management is handled now. That means that for President Trump, the most important element is to attain peace. The follow-up, meaning what do we do with the temporarily occupied and illegally annexed territories of Ukraine, is a second stage issue, and that is very clear. While for Europe, for everybody who respects international law, who supports Ukraine's territorial integrity, who understands let's say, the magnitude of damages, the killings, the suffering, the refugees, the infrastructure, the civilian casualties that happened, it's a very, very different approach. I mean, if we are going to positively sanction the aggressor, then this precedent, this example of big bully taking away territory of a weaker neighbor will become the new model for future of international relations. And I don't think anybody sober or serious would like to see such scenarios being implemented across the world to wherever the theater might occur.
Are you worried about America potentially not withdrawing, but scaling down on its troops on the eastern flank?
Well, the eastern flank of NATO has been strengthened quite a lot. It needs to be vigilant, it needs to be prepared, it needs to be aware of all the challenges and the potential crises that may occur. I think that the United States support to the eastern flank so far was really strong. Croatia is not a first-line country, so we are not in the same position. But we have supported that policy because it is important, and at the end of the day, when you look at the objectives of Russia, the way I see it, is not only to address the situation in Ukraine, but the major objective of Kremlin is basically to restore the relationship with the United States. Over the fact that the relationship with the United States is restored, to try to get rid of the sanctions regime, whether it's European, UK, or United States. And the third objective is the final rehabilitation of Russia on the global scene. These are the three major points. So in a way, for them, Ukraine is an instrument to
And how successful do you think they've been on this?
Well, certainly with the talks that have started, and when we understood the lineup of the negotiators, when we saw the main points, when you look at not the peace proposal, but literally an ultimatum, which can be an ultimatum, or in other words, a capitulation paper which was offered to Ukraine, it's very clear what they want to attain. They want to cement the status quo at the front line for a long time, frozen conflict, or gradually unattainable for Ukraine state territories which are theirs, and second, the rehabilitation of Russia at the international scene. Seems to be that these first steps that were there were somehow going in that direction, but now when the rest of us do not see a real commitment for peace, but see wider continuation of aggression, I'm not sure they will be that successful.
I will open up the floor to questions from the audience. We get questions here as well, but there will be a microphone going around here. Big housekeeping rule. Please introduce yourself, your affiliation, and you're going to ask questions because we don't have much time. No big speeches, please. So any questions from the audience? We have a lady there. We start with a lady and then the man next to her. You can take two, roll them together maybe. That's probably better. Can you stand up, please, as well, so we see you?
Of course. Okay. Thank you. This is Naika speaking. Thank you for an interesting and comprehensive analysis and discussion here. So, as you mentioned, there is not a consensus currently among NATO allies regarding the membership of Ukraine to NATO. So, to what extent do you think that security guarantees outside of the umbrella of NATO membership can actually guarantee the security of Ukraine?
It's a question of security. Let's take the man next to you as well. Stand up, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alexandru is my name. I'm part of the Global Young Leaders Forum of GLOBSEC. Prime Minister, the theme of the session is time for Europe to step up. In terms of competitiveness, what Europe should do to step up and to reduce its dependencies on other powers? Thank you.
So, reducing dependencies and then security guarantees.
Yeah, let me just say a few words on the security guarantees. Obviously, in the absence of NATO membership and the umbrella of collective security, this is the only alternative that Ukraine is seeking. Ukraine has a very, I would say, unfortunate and unpleasant experience with the Budapest Memorandum, which was a guarantee of their security 30 years ago, but it doesn't seem to have been respected by the big powers when they abandoned their nuclear arsenal, which was the third nuclear arsenal in the world at the time. And therefore, they're very cautious and very careful, especially after what has been going on over the last almost 3.5 years. When it comes to the security guarantees, even the activities of the coalition, of the willing of the major European powers, of the support of the United States, you can see there are various scenarios. What seems to be the most problematic is that nobody really is willing to put military force on the ground that would touch the front lines, but rather would be some sort of a backup security situation for Ukraine. And the way I understand the Ukrainian position is that they actually want support to the Ukrainian military, rather the involvement of the other military forces that may join them as allies. So in that respect, Ukraine is a very big country, a very strong country with an incredible resilience over the last 3 years, and I respect it, and that's what I said yesterday to President Zelensky when we honored also the fallen heroes in the Odessa Taras Shevchenko Park as small token compared to the much bigger one that happened. And I think that there is still a very strong will to resist and defend the country. And I think the capabilities of Ukrainian military, in my view, are the strongest security guarantee for Ukraine. Everything else comes as a sort of a back position. And here we need to keep all the allies included to the maximum possible extent. Not everybody would participate in the same way, but the way I see it, very, very few countries are willing not to contribute anything. Everybody wants to contribute something. For instance, we are not there on the ground, or do not have a political consensus at home regarding that issue, but we will continue to extend our military support to Ukraine. When it comes to the competitiveness issue, basically, I think the main issue for the European Union is now how to build upon on Draghi, Letta and Niinistö reports, which were prepared last year, all of them in their specific fields. And everything which was done as a preparatory background work will now start to be revealed. Once on the 16th of July, the European Commission comes with the overall legislative proposal for the new multi-annual financial framework. The new MFF is the solution for combining both cohesion and competitiveness, solution for global action of Europe, how to support Ukraine, how to fight illegal migration, how to address the issue of climate change and energy transition. So there are major areas, plus the digitalization process and the transformation, which is essential for the European economy and competitiveness, having seen how large the investment into the sector and especially the artificial intelligence is on the United States side and other big actors. So the fact that as of 28, we will have to repay the credits which were taken just after COVID for the EU Next Generation. The tranche of the credit to be repaid yearly will be between 20 and 30 billion euros. Annual budget of the European Union is around 180 billion euros, which means that we need to address the perennial issue which was being talked about but never solved, and these are the own new resources or the enlarged GNI contribution to the EU budget. This will be the gist of the debate that will start in July.
Prime Minister, there's a question that's related to what we just said about the Green Deal. This is a big discussion, especially in Czech Republic, where many want to sort of scrap it. What's your view on Green Deal? Is it still part of sort of making the EU more competitive?
Well, to scrap it completely, I don't think it's realistic, but to adapt it to the needs of the economy and competitiveness, well, there are some pieces of legislation which were in the pipeline or that were passed that obviously even from Germany's side are being looked with different angle and different optics after the change of government. And also the global context will change. If the United States is heavily investing more into the fossil fuels, then of course the European Union cannot be the one that will pretend it's not happening. So I think for the sake of slowing down the negative consequences of the climate change, we need to continue with the energy transformation and the renewables. There is common sense logic in that aspect, but at the same time, we need to measure how much we can remain competitive if others are still behaving as this issue that didn't exist. So this is the major challenge, and I think there is a growing awareness among the EU leaders and the governments in that respect.
I will sample the room. Any more questions in the room? Then we go to a very specific question online, which is about the Sky Shield. What is the latest on the status quo of the European Sky Shield initiative in Croatia?
It is an issue that is being addressed by our Ministry of Defense. As you know, Croatia has made an incredible leap forward in the second mandate of my government, which was to acquire the new multi-combat aircraft, the fourth generation. We have acquired the French Rafales. It has strategically altered the position of Croatia, which now in the area from Germany towards Greece has, without any doubt, the strongest air force. All of the planes have arrived and they have been very well trained with all the mechanics that comes along with the equipment that is there, and have now made us a far more relevant ally, both within NATO and a partner in the European Union. In that respect, Croatia is carefully following all the initiatives, including the European Sky Shield initiative, and we are waiting for the proposal by our Ministry of Defense to come up with the final decisions.
Now, it wouldn't be correct not to mention Western Balkans when you're speaking to a Croatian Prime Minister. So do you think it's realistic that Albania, maybe Montenegro, can join still this decade? Mm-hmm. And I mean, Bosnia. We always have to talk about Bosnia as well. What's your view there? It's sort of, it was some positive momentum. Now it seems stuck again. Are you giving up hope on Bosnia?
Yes. First, a general remark on enlargement regarding the countries of Southeast Europe, then specifically for the countries concerned. You remember that when Jean-Claude Juncker, who is an excellent friend and who I appreciate a lot, said, "That's it, with the enlargement now we'll make a break," there was obviously a feeling a little bit of desperation in terms of ambitions of the countries who would like to join. And there was no willingness over the past 2 consecutive mandates of the Commission and of the European Parliament to complete accession progress with any of the candidates. That was very clear. Once Putin started the aggression against Ukraine, he has not only moved Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia from a neighborhood, let's say, cluster to the enlargement cluster. That was a big consequence on the EU side. We are not mentioning enough that fact, had there not been aggression in the February of 22, it would be far more difficult to move the European perspective from neighborhood policy to the enlargement policy. Now, in a way, they are put together almost in a mix, in a blending situation. When it comes to the east countries of Southeast Europe, we meet constantly in various formats. There is a willingness of all of them to come, but there is also a sense of frustration that is taking really a very long time. Even for us, we thought in our own ambitions that we would join latest 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then we joined in 12, 13. So it's very difficult to assess the wider context. My personal feeling, and I've been there for a long time and worked on this issue all of my life and career, I think that the mood has changed for the first time now. Even when you look at the mission letter that President of the Commission sent to the Enlargement Commissioner, Madame Kos, who is a Slovenian, now seems to be a little bit more open that one accession actually happens. Otherwise, we will remain, for the 3rd consecutive mandate of the Commission, still the newest member, and 12 years has passed.
And you're not very new.
Well, we pretend we are.
Yes.
We are not. That is the first point. So there is a general understanding it could happen. Though, for us, the main principle should be the individual merits. That is one, not like a grouping, whatever, block, regional approach. I think that is unfair, and we should avoid those who fulfill the criteria and make the reforms and successfully negotiate, and do not keep them waiting for others who don't. This is my principal position, because this is what we asked from the EU when we were negotiating accession, and we were, after a very long time, and the only one who joined alone before us was Greece. And that happened 44 years ago. So we were happy to do it on our own, and if someone else deserves, we will be happy to support him. Second element is that after a very, very long period of time, within the EU, within the structures of the Council, Commission, Member States, all of a sudden the 4th Copenhagen criteria has reappeared on the surface, and that is the absorption capacity of the EU to receive the new members. It hasn't been there for a very long time. The absorption capacity translated into a common understanding that everybody knows what it means. One means the budgetary repercussions, decision-making process, and the institutional representation. These issues are very delicate. The specific positions of the older member states, especially the big ones, who until not so long ago, in their perspective, abandoned the 2nd member of the Commission, is still an issue which is alive. I mean, we don't talk about it, but it's alive. If you had 2, now you have 1, and then someone who is, I don't know, 25 times smaller gets the same institutionally as you, and you are among those 10 who pay 80% of the EU budget. There is a bit of a crispation, as the French would say. But let me come back to, you mentioned few countries. I'll start with Bosnia and Herzegovina. We strongly support European perspective of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We were the ones who urged the other member states last year to pass the decision at the European Council to open the accession negotiations. Let's say we were the warmest one, the Netherlands was the coolest one. Then we agreed that at the time Prime Minister Rutte of the Netherlands, now Secretary of NATO, myself and Ursula, we went for a joint visit to Sarajevo. And after that joint visit to Sarajevo, things have changed. And we passed that decision. Now we have a delicate internal political situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
That's the question. How worried should we be?
How?
How worried should we be?
We should be concerned. We are playing as a neighbor a calming role. We don't think that further instability anywhere across Europe, especially not in Banja Luka, which is 1.5 hours by car from my office, should be a scenario that we would like to see. So we want stability, we want them to respect the institutions, the constitutional framework, to address the issue of an anomaly, and that is that the Croats, as one of the 3 constituent peoples in Bosnia and Herzegovina, should finally be allowed to elect their own member of presidency, because now it's the other nation within Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina that is 51% of the territory that is electing actually a Croat which is not representing legitimate Croat interests. So that issue should be solved, and then we can see how we can make few reform issues pushed up. Madame Kristo was yesterday in Brussels, and there are steps that are in the right direction. So I think we should allow them also to start the negotiations. For the other countries, Montenegro is the most advanced. Albania is doing pretty well. Serbia is also making reforms, but there is still a lot of work to do for every and each of them.
Prime Minister, we have 30 seconds left, and very quickly, the one decision when we are back here next year, Modric is still dominating in midfield, you're still Prime Minister, and I still come back here and moderate. What is the one big decision you want Europe to have done next year? One.
Well, if we are discussing football, it would be fantastic.
If Croatia are world champions.
Well, we were second and we were third
Exactly.
at the 2 last championships, so maybe now it's time to be the first. Modric will be 41, and it will be an excellent way to end up the career. If that happens at European level, we are fine.
Then we're fine, huh?
We are fine.
Then we're fine. And on that happy note, Mr. Plenković, voila. Thank you very much. And big applause to him. Ladies, please stay here. Now we're going to have